Hello, what is going on, guys? Saki Guy 1 here. Welcome to my review of Paddington. Paddington is directed by Paul King and stars Ben Whishaw, Hugh Bonneville, Sally Hawkins, Madeline Harris, Samuel Joslin, Julia Walters, and Nicole Kidman. The story is basically about this bear called Paddington and lives with his Uncle Pestuzo and his Aunt Lucy until his Uncle Pestuzo does die and in a storm, and then Aunt Lucy kind of wants to go to a home retirement of bears, and then he has to go to London to basically try and find his new home. The story is really good. I like the way they kind of crafted well, and it's just kind of how it's kind of done is just really well, and how they do the whole thing with how Paddington has to try and find this new home, and that's also have to try and the brown and kind of try and sometimes they kind of stepped on that, but they obviously doesn't really fully accept him at the moment, but it just really feels kind of charming the way they kind of write out the story, and it's just pretty well progressed throughout just how he's just trying to find his home in every way, that how he tries to find him, and basically just the whole thing we're trying to find every single one of the clients, and Montgomery Client helps just each step of the way trying to figure out who specifically owned him, and just who specifically owned his hand, and just who specifically kind of he has to find it. It's just a really well progressed story for the way that it is. The whole structure behind the story is really good. It kind of starts out with the first act, really kind of introducing you to this whole thing where Uncle Susan and Aunt Lucy kind of talking, and then because this one Fleur didn't want to kill her, and you definitely tell him come to London sometime, and that's kind of sets up the whole movie. I really think that's a good way to introduce you right into the plot, and then kind of gets in it, kind of showing Paddington, who at the time didn't really have a name, and is just kind of with the whole Uncle Pestuzo and Aunt Lucy, and then Uncle Pestuzo ends up dying in storm, and then which basically does set up a whole plot right there, and you have to go right into London, basically try and find his new home because of that, and I really like how this first act is set up. It just really starts off the movie really well, and in kind of a dark and shining way a bit, but it does really set up the movie well. It really just shows specifically they have to do right away, and as they does explain exactly what they have to do really well, and then kind of goes into the second act where it's kind of Paddington's in London, it's trying to find the two of them, but then it kind of runs into the Brown the Paddington station, which is how they end up naming him Paddington, because of how they found him in Paddington station, and it's just a really kind of good way to progress the plot. He's kind of with them, you kind of see he's kind of confused how London is. He's not how he perceived it all, and confused with a lot of different things. And there's also the whole subplot with Spencer and Clyde person who's trying to hunt down Paddington because of how he's just kind of to hunt down to fulfill his whole father's death, and what they couldn't do. And I do think that it's a pretty good job kind of doing that, and it's just a whole subplot they're trying to find him at the same time. Well, Paddington's kind of with the Browns, kind of genius, and try to find exactly who it is every step of the way. How at first he's kind of just looking for it, and then he kind of goes to this whole kind of store, and fancy store where he kind of shows that it's from a guy named Montgomery Client. They kind of go and look for records, and didn't really find any because it was hidden, and figured out and then it's kind of the whole thing where he's looking through the entire thing for every single Montgomery Client, and just going through it, and kind of thing that does kind of leading the two plots kind of collide there, because of the whole thing where Clyde and Mr. Curry kind of just kind of gets into the house. It kind of causes it to burn down, but they think Paddington did it, so they kind of kick him out, and so it kind of makes sense because they didn't really know, and then it's kind of protect, and then it kind of leads into the whole thing where he looks for every single one, and eventually kind of that, and then it ends up in a mission play where he kind of really but like they do kind of like show the thing where like they're at the museum thing and it's kind of captured, and Mr. Fury kind of tells them about it because he kind of regrets what he ended up doing, and it's just really well made how they end up leading into the climax, and the Browns kind of like realizing what Paddington did, and then they kind of like go out to rescue him, and then just a really well done climax mostly, and it's just really and then there's the whole ending, which does end up wrapping up the movie pretty well, and like showing you learned, and I just really like the way it's crafted from the 3X, and it just really ended up being like a perfectly crafted movie for like how it is. The pacing is really good. I do really think that this movie does end up stretching out to its runtime and like feeling like it's a complete movie, and it's just really just a kind of heart-wrenching movie that like really you stay into the whole time. Paddington is a really good character. I really like how he's really determined to find the person who specifically like he was sent to try and find his home, and you can just see how passionate he is towards that, and plus he's also like, you really love my bear, like you can really see just how much better of a place he kind of made London, like with him being there, and because like he's just such like a person who's like really inspiring and just is really kind of a nice person, like really kind of help everyone out. I mean, it just really works, and he's just a really kind of character for that, because that's like the main character trait, and it's just really hidden into it, and it just really works out well in the end, and especially since it does end up like the whole thing like helping like Mr. Brown kind of like accept him into their family more, and it's just really shows like how nice a person he is, and just he kind of like changed the whole Browns and house around, like really kind of like making difference, really just making a lot of people want them like feel a lot better about themselves, because he's just such like a lovely kind of character. All of like the whole Browns family like are really good characters. The one like that kind of stands out more though is like how Mr. Brown kind of is like, you can tell at first obviously he did not accept Paddington, like that was mostly because he didn't really know exactly about it, and thought it'd be dangerous, but like over time he does end up kind of accepting him, because he just kind of realized how loving him is, and just really like that kind of progression of his character. It just develops him really well. And then there's like his whole wife, Mary Brown, or Mrs. Brown, like she's just a really good character. Like she accepts Paddington right away, because just how he's just kind of like a nice person, and just kind of like realizes that Paddington needs help with something, and he just really works in that kind of manner, and I just really like how they end up writing their characters. Melissa and Clyde is actually a pretty good villain. I mean, she doesn't really have the best motivation in the world, but they do make her do a few like intimidating things to make her kind of feel a bit more intimidating. To make her a better villain, even with kind of not the best motivation in the world. And it's how it's kind of like Ren. She's definitely like going after Paddington. Just a lot of the things that she does, they are pretty intimidating, and it just kind of makes her a much better villain than like it definitely seems like she would have been. The acting is pretty good. I mean, yeah, Ben Whishaw does do a really good job as Paddington. Just his whole line delivery just feels really confident, and he does a really good job in his role. And then there's like Hugh Bonneville, and then he does do a really good job as Mr. Brown, just really feeling like the character, and just giving like the kind of emotion, matching the character, just really feeling confident in his role. And the same thing goes for pretty much all the actors in this movie. I mean, they all do a really good job in this movie, just really feeling confident in their respective roles, and it's just really been like the kid actors even feel pretty confident, and they're normally like not the best, but like they definitely did feel like they're pretty confident in this role, and definitely even tried by like really being kid actors. CGI is really good, just like the whole CGI on Paddington. Like it just looks really good and convincing, and it has pretty the movements, and it just looks really realistic, really, and just really convincing, because it definitely does look complete and realistic. So they kind of blends in well with the live action, and it does a really good job with it, and they definitely make it look convincing. The cinematography is really good. They do a really good job with each camera angle. I think a lot of the times they do a good job of really showing the character's emotions. You can see that it really kind of like stands out, like with the whole kind of cinematography wise. It's just the whole kind of like scene in the highlights, like where the Browns like saving Paddington, and they do a really good job with the camera angles and that, and I definitely do feel like they do a really good job. Each scene really kind of like showing like the characters' emotions when they need to, and just really kind of like showing like each scene, like each camera like really works for the moment. The lighting is really good, as when it's at night you can see what's going on, as they use enough of it to kind of like give the illusion that it's night, but still kind of like make it so you can see what's going on, and so they just use enough of it. The editing is really good, as a lot of the times when they move from one shot to another, it ends up looking really complete. I mean, and it definitely does a really good job kind of like moving around, making it look complete as well, and just really just looking really smooth, and just really coming from one shot to another, and just really having a smooth transition to that, and each transition to each scene just really feels, well and kind of necessary, and they do a really good job with each kind of transition from one camera angle to another, and making it feel like it's completed. Set designs are really good. I like the whole looks in the brown, so it's really kind of give an illusion of a whole kind of house in London, and I really like how they did that, and especially like the whole sets, like pretty much all the sets in London, as well as like the sets in Darkest Peru as well, look pretty good, and I like how those specific sets, and it just looks like it's a force, and just do a good job with each set in this movie, really. And the soundtrack is really good. They do a good job kind of like flowing in the background and just making it really feel more into the moment with that, and as each song definitely did work for each moment, definitely did like kind of flow with the movie, and really make it feel like you're more into the moment, and flowing well behind everything, as it just really worked for the scenes that they were in. That said, I do have a few negatives for this movie. Like, there's like a bit of like Deus Ex Machina they kind of used in the climax that they felt like didn't really need to be used. I mean, like the whole thing was kind of cool seeing Paddington like walk up, but like the whole Deus Ex Machina, the Browns randomly save him. Like I feel like they could have done a better job to get out of a situation like that than just a simple Deus Ex Machina kind of cliche. And it's just kind of not. I don't really like the Deus Ex Machina trope very much, and it just doesn't really flow well most of the time in movies, and this one, not really any different. I mean, it's just one of those things that I feel like is just something that shouldn't really be used as much, because it's more of like kind of cliche that they kind of use to just simply get out of a situation that I think I'm put them in with the writers, and I just don't really feel like that it's a cliche that flows well ever. And in this movie, it definitely feels like they could have done something other than that cliche to kind of like resolve that part of the climax. And like a few things with like the motion plot, like definitely does not flow well along. Like I said earlier, the whole motivation there was pretty weak, and I didn't really like that. I mean, and plus that whole thing, like it's a lot of it just really gets repetitive after a while. It's basically it is a lot of it just trying to go after Paddington, and I feel like that part of the plot, like I forget about it at times, because sometimes they don't really go back to it very much, and it's just sometimes I just really forget about it a lot, as it's more like whole subplot that ends up kind of like going into with the plot, and it's just that it's one of those things, like it's good. It's good when they kind of use it at times, but like at times they can definitely forget about it. So overall, Paddington is a really lovely film, and is definitely a fantastic movie that can be really inspirational. So I'm going to give Paddington a 9 out of 10. That was my review of Paddington. What are your thoughts on Paddington? Tell me in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.